Yo, what's up, guys? Today we are joined by Dorki to bring you guys a Mythic Plus tier list, ranking the tanks, DPS, and healer specializations. We agreed on some criteria, and also, if you're looking for the written versions of this kind of article, there are going to be written versions on Wowhead. We're going to separate out into tanks, healers, and DPS, so check that out for written justification, where we're going to go a little bit more in depth. But first, let's talk about the justification that we've agreed upon. Dratnos, do you want to start?
Yeah, so just first off, let's talk about where and what kind of keys we're looking at here. We're not looking at like MDI keys. We're not looking at weekly 15s. We're trying to look at the high key metagame because, the MDI environment often looks pretty different. And weekly 15s, really everything does work there. And it's, hugely just based on gear and skill at that point rather than spec. But for high keys, that's what we want to look at. And we want to look with double legendaries with 4 sets. With access to like whatever items people are desiring. So full build later into the patch is where we're kind of predicting. And S tier, we want to be like the really overpowered stuff that you'd be surprised to see groups not running these specs. A is, great specs. Never be surprised to see one in a group. Then B is just kind of bread and butter staple specs that are also just, good choices. C is where we'd start to be surprised to see these specs, multiple people doing well on them besides just the people that are really specialized and love them. And then D is the ones where we think they're least likely to have a lot of representatives in those kind of high-end groups, in the Encrypted hero range at the end of the season.
One thing we would like to consider is that it's very hard to predict the very end of the season. Like, there were a lot of tier lists that I've done in the past where some specs just look really good, but as you get later into the patch where people start getting fully geared, we start doing crazy high keys, and this is going to be especially true for this patch, because we're gaining so much DPS power that we're likely going to be doing in the low 30s, maybe even like 32 keys. So when we start getting to that point, we have to consider how well a class survives. That's not just a tank.
So that's is that like Hunter in BFA season 4, where it looked really good at the start of the season, and then you realize it's just
well, to be fair, BM Hunter was still very strong towards the end of, but we can get to that later.
True, yeah. Let's get started with tanks, right?
Okay. Yes. And so first off, we have the Brewmaster Monk. So I'll start this off. Brewmaster Monk gets an insane 4 set. Overall, they're doing an incredible amount of damage. I've seen them break 10k DPS on the PTR keys. With the new seasonal affix Encrypted, like a lot of the utility that the Brewmaster Monk brings has always been very good for Mythic Plus. This is absolutely the case for Encrypted. I had them ranked in the S tier. Do you guys agree, disagree?
I would put them in A personally, because I think they're a tier below the tank I'd put in S. I don't know what you think, Dorki.
To me, I think Brewmaster is also S tier. I really don't think it's too far off from being the best. Like, it'd sort of be picking between the two, and everyone already knows which one is the other one.
Okay, all right. Well, let's toss it in S then, and let's talk about the other one.
We'll talk about the other one.
Brewmaster is, so the big thing with Brewmaster is, I feel like next patch, Holy Paladin is going to be declining a little bit, and in Shadowlands, disease dispels are really important. So generally, if your DPS is not going to be bringing it, which I don't think it'll be very popular of a pick, you'll want your tank to be having at least the disease dispel, right? So even though there are some tanks that are pretty good, I do think Brewmaster is not only really OP, but it also has a disease dispel.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. And so what about the other tank that has a disease dispel, and the other tank that we probably all unanimously have an S tier, Protection Paladin?
This class is easily the best tank. Like, if there's any S class, is this one. It does the most damage, it's consistently the most tanky, and Paladin utility is super underrated in Shadowlands. It's kind of crazy how many times where we go into a high key and we're thinking, oh man, we don't have a Holy Paladin. Well, what are we going to do? We don't have freedom for this spot. We don't have Bob for this specific mechanic. There are like so many different things that Paladins bring, and Proc Paladin specifically is not only a tank, but it's also a DPS, and it's also a healer, because it's able to heal your entire group.
So why is it so tanky, Dratnos? It's something to do with like Avenger Shield, right?
Yeah, they're playing first Avenger, and then their Divine Toll which cooldown is quite short now, with all the upgrades over the course of the expansion. It's tossing out like 30 Avenger shields, and each of those is giving you a shield on yourself. So when you press that button, you just lay on hands yourself, and then when you press your just regular Avenger shield, you also give yourself a big a big heal that also interrupts, that also makes a bunch of threats. So this is one of those tanks that it just like incidentally prevents a lot of damage by silencing casts that don't normally get kicked. And yeah, I mean, it also just has a large amount of self-healing that works well in that kind of Mythic Plus environment. It can be a little bit harder to always have enough sustain in raid, right? The raid build is a little bit different, but
Yeah.
the Kyrian build that works in M plus so well. Yeah, I mean, I want it to be alone in its S tier even, but I think that when we look at the end of the season, of the top 20 tanks, it's going to be like 80% prop paladins or more. But yeah, I definitely think Brewmaster
I
is
think
strong
that's
too.
pushing it a little bit too much. I don't think it'll be necessarily 80%, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the class gets nerfed because it's definitely an outlier at the moment.
Yeah, if it gets nerfed, then
yeah.
of
Okay,
course,
but I
all
mean,
bets are
even if
off.
it didn't get nerfed, I still feel like it wouldn't be that big of a majority. Like, I don't think it would be like season 1 of this expansion or BFA, where it's like predominantly one class or one spec.
Yeah,
I do feel like
makes sense.
Brewmaster and various other tanks can be holding that spot. Like, even right now, it's sort of like that. But also another thing with the prop paladins is that they're one of the only tanks that have really consistent tankiness. I don't know if you guys have played one, but right now they can maintain Ardent Defender for the entire time. So you sort of combo everything together. You've got Divine Toe in the start of the pull into like Infinite Ardent Defender, and Consecrate is really strong. And then you have your Holy Shield plus the 4-piece and the 2-piece combined. So you just have crazy amounts of holy power, and you have really high block chance,
Mhm.
and that which also works on magic damage.
Yeah.
So there's
I
one
think
thing that really brings is there's just like really high consistent tankiness.
I think that makes sense for these two to be our S tiers. Okay, so now Blood Death Knight. Dratnos, where did you have Blood DK?
I have them in B off of like the challenge. I think is just going to be that you're doing less damage than the other ones, but everything else about Blood Death Knight is actually really strong in this coming PTR build. It's got a fantastic set bonus for M plus. What do you think, Dorki?
It's one of the classes where I feel like it can bring a lot. I mean, not really bring a lot, but it can really. It's the only class that can survive really well on its own. Like when I play Blood DK, I feel safer than playing any other tank. The problem is that doesn't really matter in high keys. A lot of times, every single one of these tanks can survive. It doesn't even matter if you're a Pro Warrior or a Vengeance Demon Hunter or like a Brewmaster. You can survive as any tank right now, and that's not particularly a strong thing to bring into keys.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would say probably B, maybe a low A.
Yeah,
Because it's definitely gaining a lot of power going into the next patch, and it's really not that bad of a tank. But yeah, for now, I would say B probably.
I think the damage is what's holding me back.
Yeah, for sure.
And also why I also have them in B.
Yeah, I think that Blood and Prop Paladin, if I was choosing a tank to like try and carry my way to Keystone Master with in like pug groups, I think those two would be my picks because they're so capable of doing it all by themselves.
Yeah. All right. So next up, we have Prot Warrior, which I had in C, but I think it may be a B spec. It is relatively tanky. It's almost like immune to physical damage, but like we just said, a lot of the tanks are incredibly tanky on this patch. Prot Warrior's 4-set, from my understanding, isn't exactly great, and so like their damage is going to be normally in a normal season, like Prot Warrior is one of the tanks that does some of the highest DPS, and we've seen that a couple seasons in Shadowlands, and that's why we've seen them do pretty well in season 2 of Shadowlands. But I think that they're going to fall off a little bit. Dorki, do you have them in where do you have them?
I think all the tanks are pretty close, so I'll put them in B2. Like I would be surprised if any tank was anything lower than this, just because tank balance is by far the best of any expansion or patch.
Yeah, I get behind this.
Yeah, it's like you said, their damage is still really good too, which is why we see them playing in MDI. It's definitely not a bad tank, but it's also nowhere near as good as the other ones. I mean, not nowhere as good, but like you would not pick them over the other ones.
Yeah, I think that's why I had them in C's, because I feel like they're just like a notch below Blood DK, but I don't necessarily think that they're like a whole tier worse.
Yeah, when I was making my tier list, I had him like right at the top of C, but I'm happy to have him in B. That seems fine to me.
I think tanks are way too close. That's why.
It's definitely true that like you can make happen on any tank. This expansion, it's been great ever since midway through 9.0. They really fixed that.
Okay, so Vengeance Demon Hunter, where do you have them, Dratnos?
I put this in B as well. Off of the strength of I think every tank is quite close. I think Vengeance is going to work quite well for players looking to get Keystone Master, even looking to get Keystone Hero. My trouble with the spec is as you start getting higher than that, if you're looking to get like Encrypted hero, that's where you're going to start running into this problem where 2 auto attacks that interact with you when you don't have 2 defensives up are gonna kill you. So that's the main problem I have with that spec is a sort of fragile against physical damage that other tanks don't really have at like high levels and not enough defensive uptime to cover it.
Okay. Dorky,
What
where
do
do
you
you
think,
have
Dorky?
them? Yeah.
The way I see it is, it's sort of hard to say because Vengeance is a really underrated spec. I feel like Vengeance and Blood Decay in particular, those two are really underrated. And I do feel like if it's played well, it's easily an A. Sort of the same with Blood Decay, but I also agree that it's probably going to be misplayed a lot and people are not going to really like Vengeance because I actually asked my Twitch chat just once. I was like, well, how do you guys feel about Vengeance? And nobody wants to play with a Vengeance Team Hunter. If they see one in Group Finder, they're going to insta decline that class. Because I mean, like, who the hell wants to have a class that just jumps around everywhere and then your group has no slows and kicks are going off? And then, your Vengeance doesn't really know how to play the game. So, yeah, I would say B is sort of fair. But personally, I feel like it's a solid A. If
I think
it's like
their
especially
force
going
set,
into next patch.
yeah, dude, their
It's like
force
really
is
solid.
so good.
It is, yeah, it's good. You get nice high uptime on Feldev, but like I don't know if you're starting to do high keys. I feel like you need like you press Feldev and you're in meta and you still want spikes up. You still want Firebrand out. Like it's
Mhm.
you're getting battered on that
Okay.
spec.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can definitely survive just fine. It's like I was saying earlier, like any single tank can survive at the moment. And one thing that Vengeance brings really big is their damage and Chaos Brand.
Yeah, Chaos
Those two
Brand
are
definitely.
really
Like if
big.
you looked at the meters and you included Chaos Brand, it'd be potentially up there with Paladin.
Yeah, I do think it's an underrated spec for sure.
I
For me
definitely think
personally, I
it's
would put it in A,
underrated.
but I think B is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm down to concede a B. I had them ranked in A, but I'm down to concede B. All right. So the last tank we have the Guardian Druid, which from my perspective, I had them ranked in A. They are very tanky. I think the biggest downside to Guardian Druid just generally is that they have low threat on some pulls. Their force set does help them out a lot.
Does help, yeah.
It's a lot of their damage, but even still, I have noticed that Guardian Druid has threat problems. They kind of feel like a Halls of Atonement specialist in some cases. I actually think that they're maybe even the best tank for HOA.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just with how Incarn works, they may even be potentially playing Vinthier in some dungeons, which can give them a little bit more damage. It just kind of depends. Like there's like a Fae. There's some people playing Fae. There'll be some people potentially playing Vinthier. I think that Guardian Druid's like a solid A tier tank though.
Yeah, Guardian's in a really weird spot. So going into next patch, the tier set actually fixes a lot of their issues.
Mhm.
Like going into polls, you're not a complete paper tank anymore. You can just pop Bark Skin and you'll be able to get your flashes up instantly. And like you said, Fred is not going to be much of an issue anymore. You can easily be able to pick up a bunch of mobs and do like 30k burst on them. The really big issue with Bear going into next season is they don't gain any tankiness outside of the cooldowns. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but compared to literally every single other tank at the moment, every single tank is gaining something. Prop Hound is really tanky, Brewmaster is really tanky, even Blood DK. And the thing is, what I've noticed when doing PTR keys is you'll be really strong, but I mean, you've always been really strong during Incarn. So like nothing really changes there. But outside of Incarn, you feel like complete paper compared to any of these other tanks. So I've been running into your shields like where you're doing DOS, for example. You'll be really strong in Ardent Wheel, sure, that's the same as always. But then you go into the bosses and you're getting smashed. You're going into Hakar Hallway, every single 3-4 mod packs are destroying you. So I do feel like that can be a really big issue once you start getting into the higher keys, where a prop paladin will have no issue surviving.
Mhm.
But yeah, I do think A just because it's really good in most dungeons and it's easily the best tank in some dungeons, like you've said. In Halls of Atonements, for example. It's definitely one of the best tanks.
Yeah, I have them A as well, but I do actually kind of agree with you that honestly it may not be worth putting this even in a different tier than the 4 they're in B or the 3 they're in B because it is definitely
Yeah, I mean, I feel
other
like if
tanks have caught
anything,
up a lot.
I might just like say, screw it, I'd rather play a Bloody Cave than a Bear tank, or even like a Vengeance over a Bear tank. So I would maybe even put one of those over a
Interesting.
One thing that's nice as well
over Bear.
for bears and like lower keys is that it's a little bit easier than like blood decay for the healer to save you on a bear as compared to blood decay.
Oh yeah, I mean, if this was like a Pug tier list, easily S
Yeah,
tank, because I would rather
yeah, for
my tank
sure.
be a Bear tank, because it's really easy to play and you could just press their buttons and be fine. I would not trust one of them playing like a Brewmaster.
Kind of fair.
All right. So there's our tanks. Let's. What do we have next on the docket, Tettles?
We got healers. And first off, we have the Disciplined Priest. So Automatic Jack is watching intently. All of his priest followers are watching to see where we rank them. And I have the Disciplined Priest in B tier. I have them in B tier.
Are you kidding me?
I put him in C on mine. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with C, man. Put him in the gutter, man.
All right.
Yeah, that's right, Tettles. You've been listening to too much propaganda.
Okay, so I think that the biggest issue with Disc is like, so while it can do a decent amount of like healing throughput and like keep your group alive, it doesn't really do much else for like a Mythic Plus dungeon outside of that. Their dungeon utility has generally been lacking, and they're not even that high on like the damage spectrum for Mythic Plus. So for a lot of the other healing specs, whenever we talk about them in the context of raid, Discipline is normally on the higher end of like raid DPS, but for Mythic Plus, they are maybe bottom half of that, while at the same time, your group kind of always feels like they're dying. They always feel like they're low HP, and Disc still has issues like healing the tank.
Yeah, Disc's really valuable in raid because it does its damage as part of its healing rotation, but actually in M+, that's kind of less true because you got to cast more Shadow Mends, and that doesn't do damage. I do think it's a fairly awkward spec to try and get value out of an M+. It can be done, but it usually involves like the kind of bending over backwards to make it work that I think justifies a C tier.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
Agreed.
Holy Priest. Dorki, where'd you have Holy Priest?
This one might be a surprise, but I think it's an A tier healer.
Ooh.
I think it's a surprise, right? Yeah, I was playing with the #1 healer on China in Raider IL. That guy that plays Resto Shaman. He was trying this, and for some random ass reason, he was just doing the most amount of damage. It's not like Resto Shaman crazy damage, but this class with Kyrian is able to do like anywhere between 8 and 10k overall. So it's a high damage class. It struggles to live, especially once you get into the higher keys. But I feel like it is possible to live. And the healing is actually pretty solid. It's not bad healing at all. It's like the definitive healer. It just doesn't really have any DRs or anything to like really keep your team from getting one shot, especially your tank.
So where did you have this one, Dratnos?
I had originally put this in C, but I definitely like putting it higher than that. I'd be fine with A or B.
I had them in B. Okay, so I can actually explain why they're doing so much damage, by the way, Dorki. So a lot of it is the fact that they're able to keep the group alive so easily with their 4-set and double legendary that they're able to commit a lot more globals to doing damage. It's not that Holy Priest really ever did bad damage, but with that, plus the fact that they're able to play Kyrian, or they can even potentially play Fae and Mythic Plus if they want Fae Guardians, they are able to do pretty surprisingly high amount of damage. I don't know if they're A or B personally, because it's like one of those things that you haven't seen enough of them to really make the greatest guess on where they're going to be. But I definitely think that they're a lot better than they have been in previous seasons.
The other thing too is
down to concede an A.
I feel like they're just. I think they're just better than other healers at the moment. The other healers are honestly not as good. Aside from that one healer, which we know
the question is like, should they be 1 or 2 tiers below that one healer?
That is a fair point.
That one healer is like 3 tiers higher than everything else.
Quite good.
Can we make it like an S++ or something?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm fine with wherever you want to put this one. Let's talk about that one healer.
Okay, we'll go Resto Shaman next since we've just been alluding to it. This shit's S. It's not close. Kyrian Restoration Shaman, it's doing stupid amounts of damage, like 8 to 10k DPS. It was already super high overall damage with Vesper Totem in 9.1. In 9.2, they're able to play double damage legendary, which is not true for a lot of other healers, and that's actually a really big deal for Restoration Shaman. Plus, they don't lose much throughput to be able to do that. Plus, Vesper Totem getting slight buffs coming into the patch, kind of questionably.
There were some were reverted, right? There was the
conduit thing got reverted, but
I
think a Vesper Totem buff came through, right?
I don't know it. I think one might have for Ellie and enhancement, but I don't think one did for Resto.
Anyways, highest DPS healer by like a lot, probably the best throughput healer. So whenever we talked about them in the context of raid, we called them like the jack of all trades, master of none healer. That's true for Mythic Plus, but that works to their benefit in Mythic Plus because that means that they're losing nothing, while at the same time they're pumping out absolute top tier DPS and they have Shaman utility, which is, you could argue that either Shaman or Druid has the best utility, but Shaman utility with like Wind Shear, Rock Elemental, Stun, Slow, very good.
Yeah, and especially the whole thing when you're talking about how they don't really need to worry about healing while doing damage. It's especially going to be true once they start playing Chains of Devastation with their 4-piece. So they can just like spam their Chain Lightnings and Chain Heals.
Okay. We got everybody's favorite healer, Holy Paladin. Dorki, where do you think that this lands now after an absolute massive stomp on Ashnala?
Dude, I tried playing with Holy Paladins and it does not feel good. You don't feel very safe. They don't really heal a whole lot. They're struggling with mana too, so it's very hard to chain pull with them. You're just constantly asking for drinks, and it's a complete waste of time on your keys. Like, who the hell wants your healer to drink? Are you kidding me? When Growl tells me he needs a drink, I just go. I do feel like Paladin utility, though, is way too good. Like, I mentioned this before. And once we start getting to that point where we might face one-shots, I do think they could be good. For now, I'm going to put them in the B. But there's a possibility it becomes a high A, possibly even S tier if it turns out that we need a Paladin at the end, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much healing, it doesn't matter how much damage your healer has. It could be that situation where we heavily want a Holy Paladin. So however you guys want to say, like maybe it's a B, maybe it's an A.
Where did you have it,
being
Dratnos?
potentially S at the end.
I put it B as well. I do understand where you're coming from, though, Dorki. Like, B with a solid chance of actually being the healer that does the 33 or whatever. But yeah, I do think it's like, I mean, it is rough out there for a Holy Paladin right now, right? Like, it is just doing like the homework keys is a challenge on that spec, right?
Okay, that's going a little bit too far, Joe.
I had him at A because I didn't think that they fell that far, but I do. Their throughput healing is anemic.
Yeah, honestly, A is fine too.
Fine by me.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, just give him a low A. Screw it.
All right, we'll go with low A.
Fine.
All right, Mistweaver Monk. So whenever we were chanting put him in the gutter earlier, Mistweaver Monk could also go in the gutter.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I had Mistweaver in C as well.
Their utility and throughput healing are good. Their damage is catastrophically bad for Mythic Plus.
Yeah, their throughput was going to be quite good with before the big nerf that came through to the Venthyr build. But after that, I just struggle to see a strength that this spec is going to have besides applying Mystic Touch to things, which is,
I mean, even
nice.
with the throughput, though, even with that throughput, it wouldn't have helped because that's generally not the limiting factor for healers. They're basically holy priests that don't do damage. That is also a melee.
The main problem with this spec, right, is you can create yourself like 5 globals to do some damage in, and then you just don't have any buttons you can press that actually do any sizable amount of damage with those globals, which is really unfortunate.
So in the gutter they go, unfortunately.
Yeah. The spec that needs the most work.
Okay, Resto Druid. I think that this one, oh man. Okay, so at the start of the PTR cycle, they were probably S tier with Resto Shaman, but after the Kyria nerfs, Dorki, where do you think this goes?
I've been playing a lot of Resto Druid myself.
Okay.
I really do like it a lot. It heals for a crap ton, and it just feels very safe. You have infinite mana. I feel like it is capable of doing damage, but the issue is you have a hard time doing damage when you have to heal. Like, if you didn't have to heal at all, sure, that'd be easily an A or S, but I'd probably put it in the B.
Okay.
I think B is probably fine. It may be like a low A, but yeah, I'd probably B.
Yeah, I have this B as well.
I had it in A, but at the same time, like, one of the big things is like it can play double damage legendary, but at the same time, like Dorki said, if you have to like commit globals to healing, you're not doing much damage anyways.
Yeah, your damage tanks really hard the moment you have to like leave cat form and start healing.
I think it's maybe a little bit worse than these two healers now that I'm really looking at it.
I do feel like if you were pugging though, if you're pugging or if you're just like a random healer, I feel like Resto Druid is easily one of the best healers. I would love to have Resto Druid in my group. I would love to play Resto Druid myself if I was pugging. But it's just not a very good spec once you start getting into the higher keys. Man, JB's going to hate me.
That's how he is. All right. We're going to move on to DPS. So first up, we have Demonology Warlock, which I had it in C, but I'm also down to concede a D for Demo Warlock. They don't do much AoE.
No.
I put him in
Alright,
B.
Dratnos, you go
I
first.
think the spec's
Really?
not
You
bad.
guys think it's way better than I think
I
it
put it
is.
in A, man. I actually think it's a really good spec.
We ranking this for raid?
So
No, like
no. It
being a
is
good
actually
damage
good. So
dealer is
yeah,
nice.
it does okay AoE, not like crazy. But
Yeah.
it's like pretty solid AoE, and it does really good single target from what I've seen so far. Like amongst the best single target.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I just
it's
feel like there's not a lot of really good specs at the moment. So relatively, I think it's really strong.
when you're
Like
playing a
maybe
spec as well, that's like a good single target spec on a pretty short cooldown as well. That's really nice part about it too, right? Is you're not like beholden to a 7-minute cooldown or a 3-minute cooldown or something on demo, right? You can go like every minute and a half, which it makes the spec quite flexible, and it means that your overall actually tends to be quite good. If like you can get most of your cooldowns in a dungeon, you're not
But-
having to sit on it.
I run into the issue
Yeah,
of like the fact that they are such a single target specialist. All right, I'm just gonna
but
say
they're
it.
capable of doing AoE too. That's the thing. They're not just a single
Okay.
target.
Yeah,
class.
implosion, cast it. It's
All right.
good.
They do really good AoE actually.
You just want to split the difference between all three of us and just slam it in B?
I mean, I had it in
feel
B
like
originally,
that's
so I'm
not
fine with
doing it
that.
justice. So
Dorki and I have a
let's
little
put
bit
in
of disagreement.
low A. How about that? We'll put in low A.
All
Let's
right.
compromise
I
and put
think-
it
I think you're
exactly
heavily
where
underestimating.
I had it at the start.
All right. Well, I think it's a lot worse than that, but all right, I'm down with low
All right,
A.
fine, put it in B because I do think it's not a very popular spec. No one plays that crap. Who the hell plays Demo? I've never seen a Demo
it's-
player in my life.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I feel like B is justified for this because like I think it will be good in the keys that it's in, but I don't think people are gonna seek it out for keys.
Yeah,
That's probably
that I
true.
can
Yeah.
agree with.
All right.
Okay.
Affliction.
Put it in the gutter.
It's bad damage. It's awful damage. Their 4 sets like a 2% damage gain or some shit. It's
Is it really? I don't know. They're in 9.1. They do quite good damage in M+, right?
yeah.
So even if they're not gaining much this
But they
patch,
don't-
are they really going to be that bad at
So they
like an
don't-
M+ damage profile?
They don't gain much from a second legendary, right?
Right,
Because
yeah,
they're already
that's
playing
true.
Satchel, and then their 4-piece is maybe the worst in all specs.
I don't know. I mean, they were doing so much damage in like AoE pulls though.
This is true. But they were unable to do single target. Okay, so they're going to do the
true.
exact same amount of single target damage as
That's
they
true.
did this patch, next patch.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is
All right.
definitely a bad class. I don't think it belongs any higher than that. Also, it suffers from that issue where it's a class that has triple DPS specs, and you're just much better off playing any of the other Warlock specs.
That's true.
always.
Yeah, I guess Destro
Which,
or Demo
I don't know,
is like
yeah.
they
Yeah,
dominate
like, I don't
it.
know if
Yeah,
that would factor this, but
I think
I would.
it's fair to mention it. Yeah. Okay. What about
So let's
the
talk about
Destro
them.
then?
I really also want to put Destro in A just because they do have the best uncapped AoE in the game at the moment. There's no class that compares with them in uncapped AoE. So anytime there's like
A.
The
I
only
put them
issue
in B,
is-
but I'm fine with A for Destro. Yeah.
yeah, their single target sucks. That's like the very complete
Yeah.
opposite of Demo. Their single target is very lackluster, but their AoE is insane. Also, another thing that I really like about Warlocks or Destrolock specifically is they play Venfear and they spread curses. The curse spreading is so good, especially for tanks. Yeah, I'm fine with it in A. I wouldn't be
I'm
surprised
down
if
for
these
A.
get played as one of the meta classes.
Yeah, because they're such heavy trash specialists in the fact that you're able to have like 100% uptime on Infernal and AoE, and they just do so much. I mean, they're going to top, like if you bring one of these, I feel like they're going to top overall, maybe
They're a
TM.
trash specialist.
They're going to top overall in your group, and it's like they're going to be able to carry you pretty heavily on trash. I think that like warrants them to be an A. I don't think it's going to be popular though. I don't think that Warlock like generally is going to be super popular in Mythic
Warlock has
Plus.
definitely fallen off in popularity.
Yeah, but I do think they're good.
I'm fine with A for this. Yeah. I mean, I think popularity is like it's worth mentioning, but I don't think we should
No, I agree.
like we should be
Yeah,
like how
if-
popular should it be, not how popular will it be.
That's fair because I do feel like if we're including popularity in this, it'd be the same as Demo, where it's like a really good spec, heavily underrated, but nobody will really play them.
Yeah, like this is the rating it. So if we put it in B, we're underrating it too.
Okay. So Dratnos, where did you have the Arcane Magician?
I put this in B as well. This I think that of the mage specs, this one has a solid chance of being what the mage
No,
that
it's
gets
the worst,
played.
man. No, I don't think so.
But okay,
I think it's the worst, but yeah, B is fine.
fair enough. Like I put all the mages specs fairly close to each other this time around. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about Frost after the nerfs it got. What do you think, Dorki? Is that still going to be the one you're
So-
expecting?
People are saying that Frost Mage is going to be bad all of the people, especially the mages out there, they're telling us how this class is completely dead. They need buffs, but I don't agree at all. I think this class is still broken as hell.
I think
I
it's
would
still
put it
S
in
tier.
a
I think
high. I would
Frost
put it
is
in a very
still
high A. Like I would
Very
not put it in
high A?
S specifically. Yeah, the only reason I wouldn't put it in S is because I do feel like there are situations where you might not want a Frost Mage. I think they're the best in some dungeons and arguably one of the best in a lot of the other dungeons.
I mean,
So that's a guy.
they have
Okay,
some of the
go on.
highest AoE in the game, and they have like the best, maybe the second best priority damage of all of the specs in the game. And I feel like to me that warrants them being S because like you're able to get so much value out of them. Plus, if you're playing with a prop paladin, you don't have like a great slow. I mean, you have like an okay slow. Brewmaster monks, I would say, arguably has a little bit better of a slow, better of a time wrangling mobs. But I think if you're playing with like a prop paladin, you probably want a frost mage, right?
I think that there will be a lot
Maybe
of groups
it's A.
that don't run one. Yeah, I mean, I originally had this in B, but I definitely would prefer A to S.
No. B is a copium. It's definitely a very
B
high
is-
A.
B is
Fair
copium.
enough.
I'm down.
as high of an A as possible.
All right, I'm
Okay.
down to put him in A.
I'm
All
only
right.
saying this for the mages out there because every mage is gonna complain. They'll
So
say it's
true.
like C tier, D tier, but it's easily like pretty close to an S.
Okay. So we got fire up next. Where did you have fire, Dratnos?
I put fire in C. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think fire is going to be all that popular a
That's a
choice.
mage copium too.
Okay.
It's definitely. If arcane is B, I think fire is way better than arcane.
Okay. So do
I
you
think
want it
it's-
in B as well, or are you trying to put it higher than that?
I think it's also a low A. Definitely low A. If you're not gonna play frost, you're gonna play fire. That's sort of how I see it.
I also had them low A, but I don't want to bully Dratnos. Just completely hijack the tier list. So the thing with fire
man,
is like
don't let the mages compromise.
so the deal with
don't need to
fire
compromise.
is like its overall damage. So like while it's not going to be great for raid because its like throughput is not particularly strong for Mythic Plus, the ability to just have combust for every single pack and do reasonably good damage, I think puts them in A for me. Maybe that would be a B tier spec because their utility at least is lacking. And if okay, so if we're gonna really have to separate these out, it should probably be Frost and A just because their utility is a lot better. Fire, I think I'm down to put them in B now that I'm really talking myself out of it.
You just put arcane in C, honestly.
I don't know. My thinking between
B.
between fire and arcane is that I do think arcane has some unique strengths in terms of how it does damage, but
That's true.
I don't really see fire as having strengths over playing frost in a lot of dungeons.
I
The
agree
thing about
with
arcane
that.
as well is like, I don't know, Kyrian Arcane with double Lego, like that is a potent combo. Fire's not really getting anywhere near as exciting a
Their damage is
a
bad.
double Lego build or anything like that. Yeah, their set bonus is anemic. I don't know.
I've tried talking with other mages too, but they also feel like fire might be better in some dungeons. Like say you're playing
Okay.
Feeder of Pain or Spires. They prefer playing fire over frost.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not too bothered by
I-
moving around a tier or two on these mage specs.
But
Just
okay,
put in
but
like a
then
high B,
all right,
low A, something like
we'll,
that.
we'll say high B. All right.
Okay.
Arms Warrior. I had them in the B tier. I actually don't think that Arms is particularly bad. I don't think that they're like I don't think that you're like, holy shit, this is the best for every single dungeon. I do think that they're maybe one of the best specs for Theater of Pain even still, but beyond that, they're pretty middling in a lot of other cases, which middling for Mythic Plus means you're probably not going to see them.
Yeah, Dorki as the only team to ever play an Arms Warrior in Shadowlands MDI. How do you feel about the spec?
I don't know how it is now.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. But yeah, I mean, Cryptic's told me that Fury Warrior is just better now.
That's
So
the
I'm not
thing,
too
yeah.
sure.
Like, I think in a world without Fury, I could maybe be convinced to put Arms even in an A, but with Fury around, I do think B is a fair place for Arms because it's just like, I don't know. That's always one of the hardest things with making tier lists is whenever a spec is like good, but there's a better spec. How do you factor that in? I think like taking a tier off, putting
Okay.
it down in B seems fair to me.
So then do we want to just slam the Fury Warrior into A then? As a comparison of the two of those, I think I'm kind of okay with this. Fury Warrior does a lot of damage. I played with the one on the PTR. They were looking pretty solid.
Yeah,
I think they're pretty okay.
I love Fury. Like Fury does big damn. It requires your tank to be making a lot of threat on pull, but as long as your tank can do that, then Fury is having a grand old time and does a lot of damage, and it does a lot of single target too.
Yeah, another thing too is I do think we're getting into that point where we're starting playing with more physical classes or like battle shout classes, and that's definitely something really big that a warrior brings.
Yeah,
play.
and actually rally if you're trying to do high keys, right?
Yep.
All right. Assassination Rog. I actually don't know. I had this one. I don't even see where I have it listed.
It's a rogue, so we can put it in the A tier at the very least.
Oh, I have it in A tier.
I put Sin in B, but I'm fine with A. The reason I put them in B is because I think they're going to be a lot less of them than there will be of the rogue spec that I put in S. But I'm fine with A as well. Yeah,
and then,
again, I think it's just a minor difference.
Yeah, all right. So I'm down to put them in B and then put S for subtlety up in S.
Yeah, so S is for subtlety. You can tell because that's what the spec starts with.
But okay, yeah, so explain why.
it does so much stuff, and it's providing such a useful damage profile that basically by having a subtlety rogue in your group, you solve so many problems and free up everybody else to do their thing. You solve a huge amount of priority damage on a lot of pulls, right? The highest health target just takes a bunch more damage when you have a subtlety rogue, and you have all of this rogue utility coming off of them as well, and they just do solid single target damage as well. We've seen some seasons, right, like BFA season 4, where you're willing to take quite a hit on damage to play a rogue, and you don't have to with subtlety in its current state. It is doing solid damage. The overall is going to look a little lower because it's in a lot of pulls it's doing prio instead of AoE. But honestly, its AoE isn't even that bad this expansion.
Their 4-set
is actually pretty solid.
Their 4-set's very good for sustained AoE too, which I mean that's been sub's weakness like the whole entire expansion, and they're probably still going to be third place in DPS for especially if you're playing with like a frost mage and a demo lock. They're going to be
in a lot of
place.
These pulls. They should be third place, right? Like if they like they should be casting the eviscerates instead of the black powders because that's what makes the dungeon faster. It just looks bad on details, but like that's
actually
contributing.
Yeah, looking bad on details is like the craziest thing for people to conceptualize.
Yeah,
because like I go into James's chat a lot and I see all these idiots in his chat. Like, I'm not trying to flame his viewers or anything, but I swear he caters to the dumbest viewers. I'm sorry.
They do say that viewers take after their streamer. Yeah,
yeah, that is okay, dude. But yeah, like the amount of people who are like, "Lol, why bring rogue doing less than holy paladin damage?" is like beyond me. Like, are you kidding me? Nobody understands rogue at all. No, like, absolutely no one understands. I mean, even I underrated sub rogue. Like at the beginning of season 2, I'm like, yeah, sub rogue's probably like pretty good, but I don't know if it's gonna be that good. And it just turns out that it's the most OP thing ever, and we missed out so much by not playing it during MDI.
Their prio damage is just not legal.
Yeah, like you can literally delete rogue's utility, and it would still be that good.
Okay. Next up, we got Outlaw, which I think if we put Sin in B, it would be criminal to rank Outlaw. Anything higher, I think it's maybe even below Assassination. If I had to actually place it, I think their damage is like not great.
When I made my tier list, I put them right next to each other in B. So I do agree that they're right.
I would never put a rogue below B. So
I think that's a fair play.
Yeah, and like we were talking about with arms, right? Like in a world where subtlety didn't exist, most groups I think would have either a Sin rogue or an outlaw rogue, right? Like that would bring it up to A. So it's just a question of like how you want to factor that into the tier list. And I think the B is fair, but I wouldn't blame you for putting it in A either.
Okay. Next up, Feral Druid. Where did you have Feral Dratnos?
I put them in the D tier.
Just put them in the dumpster.
This is a spec that the damage profile is not good for M+, and the utility profile is also not good.
You can just say the
M+.
damage is not good.
Yeah, I mean, well, the damage... So the thing is, on PTR for a while, they were actually kind of owning because their set bonus was
but I mean, even then, that was
massively
cheesy
OP.
It was great for the clips, but it wasn't actually good in keys.
Right. It was good if you were pulling like 40 mobs or something, and then they soft capped it at 8. And then it was still pretty good in like 5-8 target pulls on their cooldowns, but outside of their cooldowns, they were really weak. And now they are weak in and outside of their cooldowns, which is not a good place to be.
For them to be a druid, they probably... the worst class in the game.
I can't think of a worser class.
I think of one, but maybe. I do also understand. All right, next up, we got the Moonkin. Dorki, where do you have balance?
I've been playing Boomkin a lot. I really like it. Before the nerf, I would have said it's an S. but right now I'll put it in like a low A maybe.
Okay.
It does really good damage. Like I think it's got the good type of damage. It's sort of like Demo Lock, or it's like a scuffed sub rogue basically, which is not a bad thing. Like I would love to be a scuffed sub rogue. Are you kidding me? That's one of the best classes in the game. Like it does solid AOE. It's like very consistent now. You can just have Incarn for basically every single pull.
Mhm.
It does really good single target. Valink still has some value, not a whole lot, but there's still some value. And Boomkin utility is always really useful. So there's not a lot of classes that are actually like, if you said Frost Mage was still gonna be OP, Survival Hunter still OP, etc., then sure, Boomkin would probably be worse. But there's not a lot of good specs at the moment, and I do think Boomkin deserves that spot to be like sort of up there.
I think bottom of A is fair.
Works for me.
That. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Hunters. We got Serve, which was OP for all of PTR. I think they still do pretty good AOE, and I had them in A, but
yeah. Let's see, Dorki.
No,
How much on the hype
It's an
train are
S.
you? It's an S. All
Well,
right.
okay, so I don't know if it's gonna stay that way, but if it's staying the way it is right now in PTR, at least from last I've tested like a week ago, not even a week ago, a couple of days ago.
So my understanding is
It-
there are still some bugs
Yeah, there's
in how
a
it
bunch of
currently
bugs.
operates, but
But some of them also negatively affects it.
right, and some bugs just when you're talking about a spec like survival, like some bugs just make it to live and never get changed and are just
Okay.
part of how the spec functions for like years. So definitely could
Yeah,
be.
so assuming how it is right now, I don't know if it's gonna change, which it probably will change. I mean, when the whole survival actually gonna be good. Assuming how it is right now, it's easily an S tier. It's the highest damage class easily. It does everything. It does good single target, the best, like some of the best single target. It does great AOE,
So for S,
and it's
you'd be
consistent
comfortable.
damage too.
You'd be comfortable like
Yeah.
predicting that the top of the leaderboard is going to be mostly survival hunter groups.
Oh yeah, easily if it's. how
you
it is
think
right
it's going to
now.
be popular this season too? What the? Okay.
Oh yeah, especially all the Windwalker players from before are all gonna be rolled as Survival Hunters. Because like, what
Alright.
the hell else are they gonna play?
All right,
The
yeah,
Mage is already taken. The Sub Rogue's already taken. I mean, what are they gonna play? Windwalker
You
again?
know, I had them in A. I'm down to be convinced.
I'm.
Yeah,
Look,
I mean,
man,
I wouldn't. I'd be surprised if it gets nerfed.
this is going to get
wouldn't
more
be
clicks
surprised
if serve is an S tier. So let's.
You're
let's
the
do
spear,
it.
baby.
Yeah,
Let's get
easily S
it.
tier.
You're the spear.
Easily
Let's
S
get it.
tier.
I had it in A as well on mine, but I'm fine with
All
this. Yeah.
Also, look at the icons. It looks just like the Sub Rogues. You
God,
see
it does.
It's, like,
Yeah,
very
there's-
similar.
I think they're just two people in like slightly different bushes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I had them in A, but I think they may be a B tier spec. So their AOE is not bad, especially with their 4-set. But I worry about like their ability to be able to do other things inside of dungeons. We saw being pretty popular in season 1 of Shadowlands, but then they started to fall off just because of hunter issues. I think that they may be a B tier spec currently.
No, I think A is fine, honestly.
Okay. You think their damage is good enough to warrant an A tier spec?
Yeah, definitely. So something that people always say about hunters is that they can't survive, but I just don't think that's true at all. I feel like hunters have always survived just fine. Look at the End of Legion, for example. End of Legion, people were still playing MM Hunters. When it was like the most one-shotty thing ever.
Yeah, you
End of
and I
BFA
both played
also-
it that season, Tettles, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, End of BFA also, when people were stacking verse corruptions on the god classes like
Oh yeah, that's what I
Demon
meant.
Hunter, Rogue, Mage, and they're still playing BM Hunters without verse corruption. Like the thing is, generally in high M plus, you'll have that one class that you can always cater to, and because of how Feign Death and Turtle works, you can cheese a lot of mechanics. So there are a lot of one-shot mechanics that you can just send it off to someone else. And people do say that they have like lack of sustain, which is sort of true, but I feel like it's something that's not really keeping them from being
they're
pretty okay.
Their
Like they're not that
single
bad of a
target's
spec.
pretty bad. Their single target's not great, but it's not the most important thing. I do worry, like if you played them with like a serve plus a subtlety rogue or 2 S tier specs, it would be like a terrible comp. Like you're playing perhaps one of the lowest utility comps in the game. If you're playing
Yeah,
serve,
if you put it that way.
serve hunter,
Yeah,
MM
definitely if
hunter,
you put it that
sub.
way. Okay,
but-
yeah, you would never play that.
I do think they feel more to me like the Arms Warriors demo locks than the Fury Warriors, the Destro locks. So
I also think it's a bit hard to compare though, because like I do feel like Survival Hunter is probably gonna get nerfed, and then in that situation, then sure, marksman.
yeah,
is definitely-
we got to assume that there's not nerfs coming, but definitely if there are, that would be big. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with A. I had them in B personally, but
I'm kind of
fine
down to
with A.
concede. I'm actually kind of down to concede a B on this because like the more
Okay,
I'm really
no problem,
thinking about
that's
it, it's kind of hard to make a comp with them in it. With with like just the utility of the whole, like the season as a whole. I feel like. Okay, Beast Mastery Hunter. I had them in C. They only do single target damage. Their AoE is still pretty bad. I don't think they're on the same plane as like Af and Feral. I think they're a bit better, but not enough better to where I'm happy with them.
Agreed.
Works for me. C is where I had them as well.
All right, cool. Elemental Shaman. Where did you have Ellie, Dratnos?
I put Ellie in B. The set bonus is actually quite good for M+, so the damage is quite good, but I don't think it's enough to break them into the meta, as it were, right? Into the A and S range. I know what you think though, Dorki. I don't know if you've had the chance to play with this spec on PTR.
Yeah, I've played with a couple of them. Played with like DJ Frush and a couple of other guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say like roughly B. I would be tempted to put in C too, but I think B is sort of fair.
I think they're definitely on the higher end of B.
Yeah, I feel like the next one would be a C, so I think B is a fine one.
Next one being Enhance.
Next one being Enhance. You think Enhance is C? You don't think it's D?
I think it's C as well.
Yeah, I think it's better than those two dumpster specs.
The nice thing about Enhance is like you do a lot of single target on it this patch, which is nice in M+, but it's nice enough for me to hold it out of D tier, given that they also do some other useful stuff. But
yeah, D is like no redeeming qualities. Why bring this kind of thing?
Yeah, okay, arguably Feral does good single target as well, but like it's a lot harder to do good single target without having like a bunch of setup globals, and that kind of stuff is really painful in M+.
These guys are really low utility though for dungeons. I feel like just generally enhances.
I mean, it's about as good as Ellie Shaman's. It's not too far off.
Ellie gets a better Earth Ellie, right? But it's not like it's actually kind of awkward with their foresight even to use.
Yeah, it's really not that bad.
Yeah, and Ellie being ranged like Thunderstorm. There's a couple other things that they get relative to Enhance, but I don't know. Wind Fury is a lot of damage potentially. So,
all right, I'm down to leave them in C. Seems good enough for me.
Okay.
All right. We have the Death Knights.
Ooh, I like DKs.
The DK duo, which Dorki's going to gaslight us and probably rank these too high.
Okay, dude. All right, so let's say Unholy first. I think Unholy is straight up bad. I wish Unholy was good, but I swear they've done bad things with Unholy this patch, this expansion in general. Their tier set does absolutely nothing for M+ for the most part. Like you do more single target with it, you have more execute, but that's not very good in M+. So they're like basically gaining no powers for the most part. There's been like a couple of builds that people have been speculating with Night Fae and Bursting Swords and stuff. I've tried a bunch of different things with Unholy and I just can't get it to work. I feel like C is like a fine one to put it. I don't think it's that good. Frost, however, I think it's really hard to say because Frost is one of those specs where I feel like it does amazing damage. Like the damage is easily A or possibly even S. Like Frosty Kid does crazy amounts of damage. I don't know if you guys have seen. The problem is Breath is not a very practical build to play in M+. It's just not suited for M+. It's more for a raid where it's like scripted encounters. You know exactly when stuff are going to come out and then you can press your breath and stuff.
Yeah.
You know when the mechanic's going to happen. But like in M+, I have like the most Windwalker brain whenever I play Frost DK because it's like, all right, well, my breath is rolling. You know, I got to just kick. I got to press AMS to stand in stuff. I got to, not like my healer's dead. I'm not pressing B-res. Are you kidding me? B-resing during breath. All that stuff.
Windwalker brain.
Or like, yeah, like if your tank tells you to stun, I'm like, hell no, I ain't using that global to stun. You keep my breath up.
All right, that's fair.
So it's one of those. But I mean, there is like people have been saying like two-handed Frost is really good. I haven't tried it since they fixed some stuff because the spec was buggy. They fixed a couple of things with it, which makes it do a lot more damage. So possibly A, I don't really know. But for now, yeah, I think B. I'll put it in high B though, if anything.
I think it's like
pretty underrated.
I think it's like unpopular, which I think is going to be definitely to its detriment.
That's for sure too.
I'm fine with B for this though. Yeah, I had them in C, but I'm pretty convinced. I had them near the top of my C, but I mean I do respect the damage.
Their damage is insane.
It's like
they
a spec
don't do anything else,
right? And there are other specs that do damage and don't cause quite as much brain.
Are they better than Arms? Are they better than Arms Warrior?
Like for sure. I mean, if we're gonna compare, their damage is definitely like their damage is up there with
Arms. Arms is certainly like Arms is certainly like a class or a spec that does damage and doesn't do anything else.
Arms doesn't do as much damage. That's why I would put them lower.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Havoc Demon Hunter. I had them in A. They do a pretty balanced amount of damage. They can also play either Venthyr or Fae. I think that they're probably going to be playing Fae this tier for Mythic Plus, is what it sounded like to me, even though Venthyr has, like, at least for the whole entire expansion, been the AoE Covenant, so it kind of surprised me to hear that they may be potentially playing Fae for Mythic Plus.
Fae's been good much of the time, especially
Yeah.
with the thing about Fae that's really nice next patch is you get like a Covenant Legendary that was BIS for M plus or great for M plus another good Legendary. A lot of specs that had Covenant Legendaries as one they were already wearing aren't getting another good one, but Havoc is.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about Fae Havoc as well.
I don't think Havoc is very good.
Okay.
I've played with a lot of Havocs. Yeah, it's every single Havoc complaint. I mean, Havoc's always complain about it, but I have played with a lot of Havocs. I don't think it's very good.
Okay.
So its AoE is just way too lackluster. Like the damage on the class is not great. If anything, it's like similar situation to how it is right now or before. Like how would you guys say Havoc is right now?
A tier
In 9.1.
I think A as well. Yeah. I know.
Survivable. I think they do. I don't think they excel in any specific damage profile, but I think they bring like really good middling damage and
target.
Yeah, they're good at single target. But they're also like decent at AoE. They're not the best at AoE, and they're specifically not great at burst, which can hold them back a little bit for some pulls in particular.
Depends on the build, right? But yeah, when you factor in 5% of the frost mage damage is theirs, like that's so much damn.
I think for me, the reason that they're A is like they have really great survivability, and like I think it's also one of those things that you're going to see them brought to high keys because they are able to kind of make it work. And while a lot of these were ranking on like theory, like where they should be placed, if played at like a maximum level, I do think that like once you start pushing to the highest keystone level, some of these specs are going to fall off a little bit, and I don't think that's going to be the case for Havoc.
All right, so
I mean, if we put it that way, I feel like it's got to be B.
I think I'm coming around on your side here because I just took a quick look at the current Raider IO leaderboards. Yeah, there's not many Havocs in the.
I'm just looking at this tier list. Like I'm seeing like Fire Mage and Frost DK and Demo Lock. I feel like all these specs are just better than Havoc. I would be tempted to even put Havoc in C, but B is fine for me. I just don't think it's a very good spec. Like a lot of these upper classes just do it better than Havoc. The only real redeeming factor is Chaos Brand.
All right, Rep Paladin C tier. Yeah.
No, just put it in D. Honestly,
I put him in C, but I
just put him in the dumpster, man.
I'm fine with the D, I guess. I mean, it is a spec that definitely needs some immediate, urgent developer assistance.
This is a class where if it actually did damage, it could easily be up there because Paladin utility, right? It's like I've said this entire time.
But yeah, one problem with Paladin utility is when prop Paladin is S, when Holy Paladin is good, right? Is like how valuable is the second or third?
Well, it's actually I think it's fine actually to have two Paladins. There are a lot of situations where you do want two Paladins, but the biggest thing by far is you can't choose your damage. You're either doing AoE or you're doing single target.
These people don't do any AoE, or these people only do like one damage profile. At least you can kind of.
Okay, but the thing is, like, you know, like you go into an AoE pull, you're doing the most dirt amount of priority damage in general. Like, let's say you're going to like a pack of a shard. Like, I think
it's going to the dumpster. It's going to the dumpster. All right, it's fine.
Yeah, it's going to the dumpster, man. I mean, I guess like C and D honestly isn't really too far apart from each other. Like,
yeah, I don't see right between those.
I'm not gonna sit here and defend Ret Paladin. They need they need a buff. Or like their 4 set was like criminally undertuned. I think it's like the biggest issue with Ret. Generally. Yeah. Shadow Priest, which I had in like A before the nerfs, and then they got absolutely shot into the ground, and I ended up putting them in B for the context of this tier list. But they also, I could see them being a C tier spec. They do bring a decent. They bring group support. I don't want to necessarily call it utility, but they do things for their group that is pretty good with like Massive Spell and Bursting Weeks. That's kind of nice. They can play Fae for Fae Guardians if they really want to. But how they do damage on AoE is kind of scuffed. Is what I would say.
Yeah, I would say that's like pretty fair. If we're like talking about like purely life keys, then sure, yeah, they're definitely not that great. But you know, if we're adding MDI and TGP to the context, they definitely shoot up a little bit to like B and possibly
just
even
because
A,
of Necrotic Wake.
They bring the priest utility that you don't want from your healer. It's got potential. Let's just say that.
Yeah,
but in the context of just live keys, yeah, it's pretty mediocre.
I'm down for C on this one. I think.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. I think for like context of TGP, like you're gonna see one of these. It's gonna be in Necrotic Wake, and they're gonna look like not that bad, but beyond that, like it's really, really, really hard to bring these guys.
I mean, even in like halls and stuff, it's pretty solid because it's got the priority damage while AoEing. It's one of those classes that can actually nuke down one target while doing a ton of AoE damage. Something that I was saying like Red lacks.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Windwalker Monk, the final spec. Man, they look really bad coming in this tier. Where do you have the Dratnos?
I still put them fairly high on mine, but you know, I have some regrets with how you guys are sounding about it for sure. I had them in A, but
Okay.
No, I think A is fine. Yeah, I think A is
okay,
fine.
all right, Poggers. Phew.
Yeah, because it's already a really strong spec to begin with. It's just not gaining as much, and Bone Dust got nerfed.
Yeah,
But
the
like
bonus nerf
it's
is
still
like
pretty solid.
yeah, I mean it's not that big a nerf, right? It doesn't scale with crit anymore, but it does have more base damage. I don't know. And like
I think they said it was like roughly a 20% nerf or something. I don't remember the exact numbers. That's what I've heard.
not to their over like not 20% of their
Oh
damage.
no,
had
right?
them-
Bone Dust
Yeah,
damage.
yeah.
Bone Dust, yeah.
I had them in top of B because I feel like their single target damage is like that bad coming into this patch that I was really concerned about the like they are one of the lowest single target damage specs in the game, and like I don't know how much changes between like their Mythic Plus and their Raid build, but even in Raid they're probably like one of if not the lowest single target damage in Raid as well, and so like I could definitely see them still being A because their AOE, while it did get nerfed, it's still really good. It's just how it is. I think that it's kind of a crime to put them in the same tier as a Frost Mage and Demo Lock, which is why I had them in B. But I don't think they're like a C tier spec or something. But if you guys are really confident in the A, I'm down.
Yeah, I would say low A. Low A is honestly.
All right, low A. All right, I'm down for bottom
right
of
along
A.
with Boomkin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seems pretty reasonable to me. All right, anything else that we want to change before finalizing the DPS list?
Seems pretty good.
Seems good to me, yeah.
Personally, I would maybe add like a couple more higher, but this is like sort of fair.
I'm really surprised that we got Serve up in here, but I'm really down for clicks.
Survival Hunter is OP as hell, man. I swear to God.
All right.
What
If
spec
that
is
class
this
doesn't
tier?
get nerfed or fixed, I mean, it's definitely getting nerfed or fixed, right?
Surely
Maybe.
copium. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dorki. Again, if you want, you can check out the written versions of these on Wowhead, where we're going to write out our thoughts and justifications for why we put everything where it is. The articles should already be up. In the meantime, anything else for you guys today that you guys want to say?
No, thanks again, Dorki. And
Buff Blood DK.
Buff Blood DK, yeah.
Buff Blood DK. All right. GG's.